Our people many years ago invented a mythical town in Eastern Europe called Chelm. Everyone in the town was foolish, including the rabbi and the scholars. And it was a way that they could laugh at each other without actually telling jokes about a specific place. So let me tell you a few quick little stories of Chelm. Two of these sages of Chelm were out walking one day. One of them brought an umbrella. It started to rain, and the other one said, "Open the umbrella." The man said, "Well, I don't want to open the umbrella. It's full of holes." He said, "Well, why did you bring it?" He said, "I didn't think it would rain." That's Chelm. So then they had a debate. The rabbis had a debate in Chelm. What's the more important, the sun or the moon? And they went to the rabbi, the chief rabbi, to try and see if they could get an answer. And he said, the moon, of course, because the moon shines at night when it's dark and the sun shines when it's light. Logical, don't you think? So the third story has to do with a rabbi and his student who go on a trip, and they're staying at an inn. And at this inn, the student needs to wake up early in the morning. And so he asks the servant to wake him up. And the servant says, "Well, I'll wake you up very early because I know the train is really early." The student said, "That's good, but don't wake the rabbi up. We don't want to disturb the rabbi. He doesn't have to catch the train." And so that next morning, early on, the servant did in fact wake up this student. Now the student in the dark got dressed because he didn't want to wake the rabbi. Unfortunately, in the dark, he put on the rabbi's long cloak, not realizing it. Got to the train, suddenly looked in the mirror and said, "That stupid servant, he woke up the rabbi." You know, the reason I'm telling this is because I want to teach a little bit about waking up. I want to talk a little about really waking up and what wakes us up, and the notion of how we actually can allow the high holidays to truly wake us up and allow us to do something in our lives that we keep saying, or some of us do, that we ought to do, and we never get there. So this sermon is about waking up. Now, I don't know what wakes you up in the morning, but this is what wakes me up in the morning. This is my alarm clock. Now it's annoying because it keeps getting faster and it gets a little bit louder, and I reach for it and I never know quite where it is on my nightstand table, and eventually I want to crush it, but I do get finally to that button which says off. Now, of course, I could just hit the snooze alarm and I could sleep a little longer. How many of you hit the snooze alarm on a regular basis? Come on, how many of you? There we go. So there are a lot of ways not to wake up. You don't have to actually get up. You can avoid it. And the truth is that that's what happens on the high holidays for most of us. We manage to avoid it. We manage to not get woken up. We wait it out. The days pass and eventually it's gone, and then we can forget it for another year. I read about this couple in Stockholm that got married. Their names were Stefan and Erika Swanstorm. And they planned a 4-month honeymoon. And they got packed to go to all the sites of the world they wanted to see. It's a true story. They actually got to these sites, but I want to read to you their itinerary of where they got. This was in December of 2010. First, they went to Munich, Germany, and they were there exactly when the worst blizzards in modern history hit Munich. So they then went to Cairns, Australia, because they wanted to see Australia, and they experienced a cyclone and spent 24 hours on a concrete floor of a shopping center. They moved on to Brisbane, Australia, where they were hit by severe floods. They traveled to Perth, where they narrowly missed this big brush fire that drove them out of Perth. And then they went to Christchurch, and you all know what happened there. It's a huge earthquake, and they were caught in the midst of it. Their final stop was Tokyo, Japan, just before the horrific earthquake which hit while they were there. And then they returned to Stockholm. Marriage intact. As far as I know, they're still married. Now, you might think that they thought God was telling them something. Don't you think at some point, maybe there's a message in this? And they did take it as a message. The message was they could endure anything together. They could face the worst and still find love and commitment to each other. We understand that as Jews, don't we? It's our history. That's our history. Our history is facing the worst and getting up and getting back and building again. That's what we have done for thousands of years. And that's what we continue to do. Now, this time of year for me is also a personal wake-up. It's got all the elements. Doesn't have the little alarm clock, but it's got a shofar that blasts. It's got a machzor with different prayers. It's got Avinu Malkeinu. It's got Kol Nidre. It's got the fasting. All of these things, it's even got the cello that we love to listen to. All of this stuff drives us out of the norm, and it should drive us to recognizing that something is different. And I need to wake up to my own soul's responsibilities and to my responsibility to my soul. You know, we can push the snooze button again this year, and I know there are many of us who will. And we'll just let it pass, and we'll hope that we don't get woken up during the year with any terrible thing. There are terrible alarm clocks that wake us up from time to time. Some of them are close to us, some of them a little more distant. This last year, one of my colleagues got that call you never want to get in the middle of the night. This was from the DC Police Department, that his 27-year-old daughter had been killed while jogging one night. It was nobody's fault. Wrong place, wrong time. Now, this was Talia, at her funeral, her mother wrote a letter to her daughter, Tali. I want to read a little of what she wrote. My darling Talia, you had a strong sense of right and wrong from a very early age. For your bat mitzvah, you made baskets of children's books for centerpieces and donated them. You adopted animals from the local zoo for party favors for your friends, being careful to match the right animal to the right friend. You lived your wonderful life with a sense of goodness and purpose, and you followed your rules, the rules according to Tali. Always close the toilet lid before flushing. Always take care of your friends, but leave the food at the door if they're sick. Never sleep in your own bed if you have company visiting. Be a vegetarian, but cook great meat dishes for your carnivore friends. Always pick up your friends at the airport. Write thank you notes. Make things beautiful for yourself and the world. Tell the people you love that you love them every chance you get. That's an alarm clock that is close to my heart. Reminds me how precious time is and the people around us. Some in our congregation this year have suffered incredibly difficult wake-ups. Child dying of painful cancer. Young husband killed by an intoxicated driver. Word of being fired or your job is no longer there. I want you to know Kol Nidre is not that kind of wake-up call. It isn't. It's not about crises. It's about us listening to our Jewish soul and deciding to change. It's about us waking up without the crisis. None of us want that crisis to change, but we have the opportunity to change tonight, this Yom Kippur. I certainly know I'm getting older, and I know the time is ticking. And I also know I can't get back any of the seconds or minutes or hours or days or weeks or years that have gone in the past. There's a museum in Israel, a children's museum in Holon, and they have a number of interesting exhibits. One of them is called Dialogue in Time. Every guide must be at least 70 years old to guide you through it. It's about what happens as you age. Each exhibit is taking you through changes physically and psychologically that people who age go through. The last place in the exhibit is a room. There are 2 doors. One door says looking back, and the other one says looking ahead. No matter how old we are, we still can change. It's about choices. I forget that at times. I'll bet you do too. I'll bet you forget and just allow the patterns, because I do, in my life to just continue. Even though I want to change them, I forget that time is ticking. And I don't have the same speed or dexterity or strength that I had 30 years ago. That fasting on Yom Kippur is more difficult as I get older. That a lot of things are more difficult as I get older. And I need to take ownership of the changes that I speak about but don't do. You know, other religions believe in destiny. Science is positing now that it's all about being hardwired, about chemical reactions. But Judaism says it's in our hands, your hands, my hands, to change, to make a difference, to move in a new direction. We can do that. We can make a difference. One of our members, Harvey Chaplin actually, sent me a piece a couple of years ago. I've kept it because it's about aging. And as I was aging, I read this from time to time, and I try to let it remind me. I want to just give you a couple of lines. Life has a way of accelerating as we get older. The days get shorter. The list of promises to ourselves get longer. One morning we awaken, and all we have to show for our lives is a litany of I'm going to, I plan to, someday when things settle down a bit. If you were going to die soon and had only one phone call you could make, who would you call and what would you say and why are you waiting? That's the question that haunts me. I'm going to die, so why am I waiting? Why am I not making the call? Why am I not making the change? Why am I not taking responsibility for my life? And why are you not doing the same? This year, I've decided that I'm not going to let this year pass again. And I'm hoping tonight to convince some of you to not let this year pass without changing, growing your Jewish soul. Being better next year Jewishly than you are this year, knowing more, understanding more, having made the decision and commitment to change, to do something about your life. And I'm going to challenge you, every single person in this room, everyone here, to go on this journey and make this change. Now, this year, I reached the age that my father was when he found out he had terminal cancer. And next month, I will turn the age my father was when he died of that cancer. In A Few Good Men, Jack Nicholson asked the question, you want the truth? You can't handle the truth. But I think we can. I think we can handle the truth. The truth is that I'm 75% into my life. I've already lived 3/4 of my life. Only 25% left. And for almost every single person in this room, we're on the back 9. Some of us are on the last couple of holes. That's the truth, if we're willing to admit it. Do the math. Average life expectancy, even for those of us in this room, isn't much higher than 80, so figure it out. So what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? There isn't forever to make the change. Why would we want to regret at the end the changes we should have made and could have made this year? And that's the invitation, and that's the challenge. I don't know if this frightens you. I don't know if this motivates you. I hope it will. It certainly motivates me. I know when I go to funerals, I know how people are praised. They're praised by the way they affect others' lives, by their character. I want that for myself. And I want to make sure that I live the right life. The chief rabbi of Great Britain, Jonathan Sacks, just wrote in his introduction to his new Machzor some words that I want to share with you about Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the Holy of Holies of Jewish time. It's Judaism's answer. Judaism sets the bar high, expecting great things of us in word and deed. And he said that on Yom Kippur, it is better to fail while striving greatly than not to strive at all. God asks us to acknowledge our failures, repair what we have harmed, and move on, learning from our errors and growing thereby. So this year, I'm asking you to grow your Jewish soul. That's it. Grow your Jewish soul. I know you do a lot of things. I know you learn a lot of ways. But Jewishly, let's grow this year. Let's make a difference. I'm asking you to be as good as your synagogue is. Because Temple Beth Shalom has been on a journey for decades now to do better every year. We are never satisfied with what we did last year. Every year we are adding new and deepening our programs. We're doing that in our worship, in our study, we're doing it in our mitzvot, but not everyone who is a member of this synagogue is on that journey with us. In fact, most of you aren't. I'm challenging you to be as good as Beth Shalom is. Beth Shalom is not great yet, but we're on a journey toward greatness, and your clergy and staff and board understand that. And the programs you read about in the New York Times or in the Herald, and the things you don't read about, are ways that we are growing as a synagogue. And yet it's frustrating that so many of our congregants sit out there and are not part of it and won't grow with us. You know, Rabbi Morrison tonight is again at the museum, Jewish Museum of Florida. She'll have over 200 20 and 30-year-olds again tonight. They won't be texting tonight. That was last week. But I want you to understand, because we get to hear things that you don't get to hear. People who actually take the journey do go through transformations. Let me read to you some of what she heard last week from these young Jews. These are actual things they either said to her or they wrote to her. I haven't gone to temple since I was forced to as a kid years ago. I came tonight and I finally feel just how amazing prayer, when explained and then understood, can be. I can't believe how connected I felt tonight to the others in the room, the rabbi and myself. I haven't been to a service in 6 years. It's nice to be back. I felt so much more involved, more connected. I really felt a connection to being Jewish. I felt really close to God. It was incredible. And listen to this one. Tonight, I experienced God. Yesterday, I didn't believe in God. That's transformation. That's a deepening of a Jewish soul. Those young people, whatever the techniques we use, are being touched. I challenge you this year to join that journey and to allow yourselves to grow and to be touched, to let your neshama, your soul, your Jewish soul, come alive and be a part of everything that we're doing here, at least some of the things. Now, some of you think I'm not talking to you. Some of you don't care that I'm talking to you. Some of you will walk out of here and not respond. But some of you will respond. And if more of us can respond to this challenge, we as individuals, as a synagogue, as a community, will truly be on that road to greatness as Jews. Tablet magazine asked a number of Jews what they want to do this year. Doreen Carvajal, an author, who just discovered her Jewish roots. She came from a Catholic family and found out she was Sephardic. One of those stories, dying grandmother reveals it. So this is what she wants to do this year. I plan to celebrate this new year by working on the neglected foundation, reading the Hebrew Bible. Another confession, it's the first time. She's going to read the Hebrew Bible this year. Ruth Weiss of Harvard talks about journeying to Israel because it does something for her. She needs to go more often. But I want to share with you Elizabeth Wartzel, who's an author, what she said. It makes no sense that I write so much less than I used to, when I ought to do it so much more. I can only explain it as the worst kind of self-destruction taking over. But what a powerful drive. It is a force so great it ruins the best thing about a person, and then it makes life not worth it at all. All that havoc could be so easily avoided by just doing what God intended. So, I had better write a book, and everyone else had better do whatever it is he or she really should be doing, or what's the point? That's it. Or what's the point? It's a good question. You know, it's so easy for us in America, so easy for us to be Jewish. So easy for us to get involved. It's so easy for us to add some commitments to our lives. It's easy. When I look at what other people have to go through, other Jews around the world, to be Jewish, it frustrates me because I see the length to which a Jew in a far distant country will go to get a little Jewish education when it's hard to get members of this congregation to drive 5 minutes to come here to go to a class. You know, in Alaska, I met some of those frozen Chosin. That's what they call themselves. There are about 6,000 of them. They are frozen most of the year. And in Ketchikan, there are about 50 of them. One family is the Doolin family, and they raised 4 children in this community of 50 Jews, and they educated them themselves, and they found online ways to teach their children, and they're there to do things like what happened when a member of one of the cruises had a heart attack, and his wife was asking, is there a place for Shabbat dinner? And they opened their home to this stranger. Ketchikan, how many times have you opened your home to a stranger for Shabbat dinner? There's a Chinese Jewish young man who may become the first Chinese rabbi in 200 years. He just made Aliyah. But he knew he was Jewish because on his internal identity papers, it said Jewish. The only thing he knew was he wouldn't order pork when he went out with his friends, and he had a passion for learning Hebrew. Do you think about being Jewish when you order at a restaurant? Do you have a passion to learn the language of our people for thousands of years? But let me give you the one that most motivates me. It's a girl. Her name is Mylin Kalman, and she lives in Jakarta, Indonesia, Muslim country. She so wanted a bat mitzvah that for 1 year, when she was 11 years old, she traveled every Sunday to another country, to Singapore, to study with a rabbi. Finally, they were able to bring a tutor to Jakarta, and she had her bat mitzvah there. But that's not the only thing. She was born almost totally deaf. She has cochlear implants, which allow her to hear some things. But she had her bat mitzvah, first one as far as we know, in Jakarta. She had 150 guests. They produced the book. They brought in a rabbi from the United States to be able to officiate. And we are right down the street from your homes. We're within minutes. Do you have anywhere near a desire or passion to learn like that? And are you willing to at least make a commitment? You know, there's this strange story in the Talmud. The Talmud offers very strange stories in order to focus on ideas. Talmud says, if you run across a 2-headed man and he wants to put tefillin on, which head do you put it on? That's the question. So Rabbi Soloveitchik proposed a test. He said, you cover the eyes of one of the heads, you pour hot water on the other, and if the one who's blindfolded cries out, they are one person. Otherwise, they are two. I think that's like me. Sometimes I'm one person, but sometimes I'm two separate people. Sometimes I have a desire to do things, but I don't do them. Sometimes I know what God wants of me, but I don't respond, and sometimes I do. And this year, I'm asking you to put your heads together and respond. And some of you may think it's too late. So I want to show you something. You see this little thing here? This is a knitted cap for a newborn infant. It was knitted by a 106-year-old woman. Her name is Maisie Ford. She lives in Hallandale. We carry some of her, Sandy carries some of her knitted items in our gift shop. She learned to knit at 98. And her mitzvah is she makes these caps for newborns at Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital. Is it too late for you? Maisie's still doing mitzvot. She's still learning. She's still giving. She's still growing. And I would argue, how can we do any less? So, here's the plan I offer. It's very simple. On Thursday, day after Yom Kippur, you're going to receive an email from me. It's already been done, so sorry. It's going to be sent on Thursday, whether you like it or not. In it, it's going to offer you 10 choices of commitments you're going to make this year in 3 categories with 1 bonus. Each of the choices are escalating. The first category is Torah, Jewish study, and there are going to be 3 choices. The next one is Avodah, Jewish worship. Again, 3 choices, each one greater than the other one. And then finally, Gimilut Chasadim, acts of loving kindness. Again, 3 choices. The final one, which I really like, is this year do as many mitzvot as your age. I like that. That's a challenge, isn't it? But that's number 3. If you can't get to that, you can do number 2, which is be a captain at Mitzvah Day, or you can do number 1, join our PAC Justice team. And if you want another choice, there's a comment section where you can add. The bonus question is, the bonus commitment is tzedakah. Increase your gift of tzedakah overall this year by at least 10%. Now, I would love you to check all 10, but I'm realistic. I don't know that anyone will do that. But I would challenge you to do 1 in each category and the bonus. Do 4. If you have to, really do 1. But don't just let it go again this year. Do at least 1. Commit to grow your Jewish soul. Don't go back to sleep. Don't hit the snooze button again this year. This year, join that journey that we are on. And next year, when we're here, let's see if each one of us can find in our true evaluation of who we are that we are on the journey toward Jewish knowledge, that we have taken steps toward understanding Jewish prayer, that we have done more mitzvot than we did last year, and that we have made a difference by giving more tzedakah into the world this year. Let's wake up. Let's remember time is ticking. We don't have an endless supply of it. Let's use it wisely. Gemar Chatima Tova, I wish you a good new year and a year of growth. Ken Yiratzon, may it be so.